I could spend an hour talking about MEES and green lease drafting, but I only have 2 minutes. So, very high level, what should a commercial landlord consider? Number one, seek to incorporate a landlord right to enter the property to undertake energy efficiency improvements. In practice, this type of landlord right is likely to be qualified so that tenant consent is required. But don't forget about the available exemptions that we discussed in episode 4. If tenant consent is not forthcoming, it may be possible to rely on an exemption, but always subject to registration on the PRS exemptions register. Number 2, seek to restrict the tenant's ability to obtain an EPC because a new EPC may turn out to have a lower substandard rating. It will not be possible to totally prevent the tenant from commissioning an EPC because the EPC regulations will require a valid EPC on an assignment, on a subletting, or for major works. But landlords should consider the following options. The tenant only obtaining a new EPC with landlord consent, such consent not to be unreasonably withheld, or a requirement that the tenant uses the landlord's energy assessor to produce the EPC. This will, in theory, ensure that the EPC assessment is answered with accurate information about the property, which should result in a better EPC rating being achieved. Number 3, when dealing with tenant alterations, consider whether you can impose an obligation on both landlord and tenant to consider the environmental impact of the proposed works. Number 4, think about possible recovery through the service charge. Can you recover energy efficiency improvement works done by the landlord to the common parts of the building? Or is there an ability to recover the costs of auditing the environmental performance of the building? Number 5, consider what express assumptions and disregards would favour the landlord from a rent review perspective. For example, an assumption that the hypothetical letting can be granted lawfully despite the property actually being substandard. Finally, number 6, consider the tenant's yielding up obligations. Likely to be challenged by tenants, that landlords could seek to impose an obligation on the tenant to yield up in a condition that is not substandard from a MEES perspective. To find out more about the MEES regulations and how they affect your estate, click on the link above or contact the team at CMS.